Welcome to Mornings with Meep. I'm Meep. Hey. I've got my Oreo mug, but I've already had all of the milk from it. Oops. So today I want to talk about a book by Barbara Tuchman called The March of Folly. And it covers kind of four semi-historical eras where the government failed in terms of they were warned, they were making some big mistakes, and they persisted. The first one is on the Trojan War and the Trojan horse, which kind of weakens this whole book. The historical element of the Trojan War, yeah, Troy did exist, and there probably was something like a Trojan War, but the Trojan horse is more literary than anything else. So we'll ignore the Trojan War for right now. The third and fourth, the third one is England losing the American colonies through, it's not just George III, but Parliament and a lot of very, let's just say, aristocratic guys, though some aristocratic guys understood that it was a big mistake to keep antagonizing America as they were. And the fourth is on America and Vietnam. One of the biggest problems with this one is that this book was from 1984. So we still have found some more stuff since then, but we're not going to go over that. You'll notice I skipped over the second one because that's what I want to talk about today, and that's the Renaissance popes. And it's basically a series of popes leading up to Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses. And one pope in particular I want to talk about, it was the Borgia Pope. Rodrigo Borgia was Pope Alexander VI. And you might not be familiar with him specifically, but you probably heard about two of his children. And if you're thinking about, wait a second, a pope with children? Yeah, and he had more than two. Cesare Borgia and Lucrezia Borgia were infamous in their time. Some people say Lucrezia got a bad rap because of her brother Cesare. Cesare got a deservedly bad rap. He assassinated, poisoned, blah, blah, blah. So that gives you an idea. That said, their specific personal behavior is not what led to Martin Luther. We had a series of six-ish popes that basically were pursuing their own personal aggrandizement ends, political ends, trying to grab land in Italy, really going for political power. There was Pope Julian II, the warrior pope. He actually went into war himself. So this was not a great time for the Catholic Church. But more than that was what was happening outside of Italy in the various Catholic dioceses. One of the issues that really funded all of this politicizing. They needed a lot of money for this, so they sold church offices, basically. I mean, as bishops were absent from their diocese. And a lot of these bishops held more than one diocese, which is, I don't want to call it illegal, but against canonical law now. So a variety of outsiders outside of Rome and a few inside Rome too. You got to stop having mistresses, though that, yeah, they needed to stop having mistresses and a bunch of bastards. They needed to look at pastoral care. It was being just neglected. And often some of these bishops never went into their cathedral until their funeral. That was the only time. They were in an entirely different country. And so what was so great about being a bishop? Well, of course, you get the tithes. And then you might have a very cushy lifestyle in Rome itself, and then you start trying to go for the papacy. And so Tuchman goes on about some of the politicizing of jockeying to become pope, and then how some popes kind of were accidental popes because there were two big guys going after each other, and then they picked a third who was old, and we figured he'd pop off early anyway, and in a couple cases. The big thing with the Renaissance popes is that the reformers from outside saying things need to change kept calling for church councils, and that's where you get all of the bishops together. And the Pope, I think he presides, but he can't control what happens in the council. He's just one bishop among many. And of course, the Renaissance popes did not want to give up any of their power. So they had some bogus council-ish, some papal bulls, and that's the bullae, the little seal, the balls that came along with these pronouncements. And they figured, they knew it was a problem. They knew that selling the offices was the ancient sin of simony. They knew it was actually a mortal sin, according to the church. Those rules hadn't changed. But they didn't want to give up their power. And they figured, I'm an absolute monarch, more or less, as the Pope, and I can just keep putting off these councils and it will be all okay. Après moi, sorry, my French ain't great, le déluge, it's not my problem now, it will come later. Well, later came in 1517 with Martin Luther. And all hell broke loose, as it were, in Europe. And it wasn't until about, I guess it was 1545, was the Council of Trent. And yeah, and I'm looking it up right now. It took a long time. So in 1517, I mean, there was a call for a council in response. Actually, even before Martin Luther nailed the theses to the church door. But in 1520, and it took a long time before they got this reforming council together. 1545 to 1563, it ran. Yes, it condemned Protestantism, but it also reformed a lot of the bad behavior in the church. So, yay, Council of Trent. Yeah, I'm Catholic. But my interest here, of course, is pensions. I posted Friday night on a call for comments on a draft exposure of an actuarial standard of practice, number 4, on measuring pension obligations. Now, it's not just for public pensions. This is for any kind of pension practice. And the issue is some of the letters I'm reading remind me of the Renaissance popes. As long as we don't have to change what we're doing, we don't get caught out, and hey, if 10 to 20 years from now, it turns out our lowballing of pension obligations ended up with the money running out, well, that's a problem in 10 to 20 years, right? Après moi, après nous, les déluges. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, look at what I'm wearing today. Some of the vaunted integrity of actuaries was built on actuaries standing up and saying, this is how much promises cost, and actuaries being willing to resign when they were being strong-armed into trying to report something else. I have not heard of such stories in the pension sphere. Perhaps they exist. But even though I don't work in property and casualty insurance, for example, I do know, and I have talked with P&C actuaries who had been appointed actuaries and basically had to resign rather than sign off on what they considered deficient reserves. I have seen this personally, life and annuity industry, but I don't know about pensions. I'm very, very willing to hear about that. I know about Foster, who was at Medicare and would not shut up about how much Medicare Part D would cost, and he was a government employee. That's not pension. So I'm willing to listen, but let's not end up with some outsider basically taking over, saying, okay, actuaries, you're not taking care of your own house. This happened in the United Kingdom.